So, Secretary Bessent, you and I agree that it is a conflict of interest for members of Congress to trade stocks. Do you also agree that it's a conflict of interest for President Trump to trade stocks?
Well, a couple of things, Senator. One, President Trump is not sitting in the Oval Office engaging in a high-frequency trading strategy. Clearly, he had an outside manager who was doing that, and
Elizabeth Warren, former Harvard law professor, architect of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, senior member of the Senate Banking Committee, just trapped Scott Bessent inside his own words. Last year, before he joined the administration, Bessent supported banning members of Congress from trading stocks. He said the returns were so eye-popping every hedge fund would be jealous, and that if a private citizen traded that way, the SEC would be knocking on their door. Strong words from a former hedge fund manager. Then Trump's financial disclosures dropped. More than 3,400 stock trades worth over $250 million in just the first 3 months of 2026. Roughly half of what all 535 members of Congress traded, all of last year combined. Warren asked Bessent to apply his own standard. Watch this. If you want to support the channel and get exclusive videos, kindly hit the join button below. That's how we keep this going.
So, Secretary Bessent, let's start with something you and I agree strongly on. Last year, you came out in support of a trading ban for members of Congress, and I have introduced legislation to do exactly that. You explained the need for a ban on our trading stock by saying, quote, you look at some of these eye-popping returns, every hedge fund would be jealous of them. And that, quote, if any private citizen traded that way, the SEC would be knocking on their door. Those are strong words from someone who used to run a hedge fund. Last month, President Trump's latest financial disclosures came out, and they show that he made more than 3,400 stock trades worth more than $250 million in just the first 3 months of 2026. That's roughly half of what all 535 members of Congress made last year combined. And the value of virtually every one of those stocks that the president traded in is directly affected by President Trump's official actions. So, Secretary Bessent, you and I agree that it is a conflict of interest for members of Congress to trade stocks. Do you also agree that it's a conflict of interest for President Trump to trade stocks?
Well, a couple of things, Senator. One, President Trump is not sitting in the Oval Office engaging in a high-frequency trading strategy. Clearly, he had an outside manager who was doing that, and I think it's incumbent upon both houses of Congress to get their house in order before you move to the administrative branch.
You think it's okay for the president to do this? Because let's be clear, you are a Wall Street guy, so you know better. The investments that President Trump has made are not blind. President Trump literally signed the 113-page document publicly listing all of his individual stock trades at the same time that he is making decisions affecting those stocks. So you're going to sit here with straight face and say it's not a conflict of interest for the President of the United States to do that?
I'm going to say this body needs to get its house in order first.
How about,
I encourage you to do that.
I don't trade in individual stocks. I don't own any individual stocks. My house is in order.
Senator, you're very
Mr.
rich.
Secretary.
Others on this committee can't say that, Senator.
Let's look at some individual trades. On January 6th, Donald Trump purchased up to $1 million worth of NVIDIA stock. 1 week later, his administration changed U.S. policy and loosened the rules on export controls so that NVIDIA could sell its chips to China. Now the price of NVIDIA stock is through the roof. So, Secretary Bessent, you said last year, if any private citizen traded the way members of Congress do, quote, the SEC would be knocking on their door. So my question is, should the SEC be knocking on President Trump's door floor to start an investigation over this trade.
Again, if this body wants to ban individual stock trading, which I would advocate for yourselves, start there. And if you want legislative action to continue, that's your prerogative.
So it's our prerogative. So you would support our saying that President Trump should be investigated over this?
I would support
our trade
support,
should be investigated and President Trump should be investigated.
I would support you getting your house in order, Senator.
And how about the White House getting its house in order?
Again,
would you support that investigation?
Please lead by example.
I would like to see the President of the United States lead by example. You say there should be an investigation when that kind of activity takes place. How about we start with the White House?
Well,
Let's
you
do
create
one more.
statute. The President does not.
Trump bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of stock in Robinhood and the Bank of New York Mellon Corporation, known as BNY. On April 6th, your Treasury Department announced it had chosen the financial agent to implement the new Trump accounts program, BNY and its partner, Robinhood. Both stocks, of course, have risen since then. So, Secretary Bessent, let me ask you a different question. If these stock purchases that Trump made were made using inside information, would that be illegal?
Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to speak to that. And I think,
would it be worth investigating? You don't have to be a lawyer. You're the one who said what should be investigated.
Why don't we investigate many people on this committee, Senator? Many people.
And you don't think the White House should have to follow the same set of rules that are already the law?
I think you should get your house in order here.
My house is in order. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
And you should have your fellow committee members, mostly on your side of the aisle, do the same.
We need stronger anti-corruption rules and conflict of interest rules in Washington for everyone. And that includes the president and it includes Congress. And instead of draining the swamp, what Donald Trump is doing is he is enriching himself by taking advantage of his position. That is not public service. He's the one who should lead by example.
5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Bessent, if I'm not mistaken, you were working in the financial service industry during the late 1980s, correct?
I was.
Thank you. And well, I'm wondering, do you recall or you're knowledgeable of the Keating 5 scandal back then?
Yes, sir. And I will point out that I was.
I don't want to.
No. I will point out that
limited time. I have limited time.
I identified.
The gentleman is from the Secretary. Is the gentleman from New York's time?
So I just want to make sure that everyone knows who doesn't know that the Keating 5 scandal involved 5 U.S. senators accused of pressuring the Federal Home Loan Bank Board to expedite and give more consideration to the case of Charles Keating Jr., who ran the California-based Lincoln Savings and Loans. It led to a 14-month investigation unveiling how 5 U.S. senators and staff ended up with more than $1 million in contributions, 4 trips to the Bahamas, and all expenses paid stays at resort hotels. Following the scandal, the industry saw sweeping regulatory changes that was launched by then-President George H.W. Bush. Now, Mr. Secretary, I'm sure you can agree conflicts of interest and improper influence by U.S. elected officials over bank regulators weaken supervisory independence and ultimately impose massive losses on consumers and taxpayers. I think that we can all agree upon that. And as we know, the basic lessons from the post-Keating reforms still applies today when the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, the OCC, is deciding to get a bank charter. I think we can stimulate that. Now, Mr. Bessent, as our nation's treasurer, I'm sure you also know that a foreign-linked investment firm tied to the United Arab Emirates government quietly bought about half of the Trump family's crypto company, World Liberty Financial. And at the very same time, the President of the United States was dealing with that country on foreign policy. Now, Eric Trump, the president's son and co-founder of World Liberty Financial, said, and I quote, "I'm not going to get into who the investors are, but I've got some pretty meaningful investors, end of quote. Lack of transparency. And it didn't end there. When Trump fans brought the tokens, they thought they were getting the deal of a century. But what they didn't know was that only Trump and his sons had the sole power to decide who can sell the token and when. Today, the price of the token has fallen over 50%, and the Trump fans who bought the token are now begging to get out. Now, I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. You can see it for yourself on the World Liberty Financial Discussion Forum. Yeah, yourself, Mr. Secretary. So this is no longer just about a shady crypto deal or a possible gift when a foreign-linked investor is putting hundreds of millions of dollars into a company controlled by the president's family, and at the same time, this president is conducting foreign policy with that country. You know what that creates? It creates a national security concern. So, I'm not going to ask much of you, Mr. Secretary. I just want to know whether you will commit today to pause and heighten the scrutiny of any bank charter or licensing application at the OCC connected to the World Liberty Financial until all of these conflicts of interest and foreign influence reviews are completed and shared with the United States Congress. All I need to know is, will you halt it and do a complete investigation and scrutiny of this licensing application? All you have to ask is yes or no.
No, Congressman.
All you have to ask is
the
yes or no.
OCC is an independent entity, and I would know, Congressman,
so I take that as a no.
You traveled to Venezuela to lobby
I take that as a no.
On behalf of your donors.
On behalf of your donors. You do not want to answer that question. I take that as a no.
For a $7 billion.
I'm asking you to do your responsibility as Secretary of the Treasury.
Into a Venezuelan.
You do not.
Mr. Meeks,
time
has expired.
You cannot erase what you did in 2006.
He's the one that went past your time, Mr. Chairman.
No,
he did not answer my question, and he wouldn't pass the time.
He had 6 seconds left to try to answer your question, and it
was a yes or no. It was a yes or no answer. I asked him, will he? No, it was yes or no.
The OCC is
gentleman. Stop covering for the president. Stop being his flunky.
Gentlemen.
He's talking to me. I'm responding back to him.
2006 trip to Venezuela.
Stop covering for the president. Don't be a flunky. Work for the American people.
Mr. Meeks,
trip to Venezuela.
Work for the American people. Don't be a cover-up for a mob.
Maybe you're going to see your friend Nicholas Maduro.
Gentleman is not recognized. Mr. Bessent, please. I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Sessions. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Secretary, welcome to the Financial Services Committee.
Let's be absolutely clear about what Elizabeth Warren just exposed. The Treasury Secretary went on the record last year saying that the kind of stock trading he was criticizing would bring the SEC knocking on a private citizen's door. Now, the President of the United States has done that exact kind of trading at a scale that dwarfs all of Congress combined. And the same Treasury Secretary refuses to apply his own standard. And the trap she sets is elegant, because it's built entirely from Bessent's own words. Warren opens by noting common ground. Last year, Bessent came out in support of a trading ban for members of Congress, and Warren has introduced legislation to do exactly that. She quotes him directly. He had said the returns members of Congress were getting were so eye-popping that every hedge fund would be jealous of them. And he had said that if a private citizen traded that way, the SEC would be knocking on your door. As Warren notes, those are strong words from someone who used to run a hedge fund himself. Then she introduces the new facts. Last month, President Trump's latest financial disclosures came out. They showed he made more than 3,400 stock trades worth more than $250 million in just the first 3 months of 2026. To put that in perspective, Warren points out that's roughly half of what all 535 members of Congress traded last year combined. One man in 3 months trading at half the volume of the entire legislative branch over a full year. And critically, the value of virtually every one of those stocks is directly affected by Trump's official actions